Welcome to the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast, where we simplify the complexities of your leadership journey. And remember that this year we've got a theme. All year we're going to be talking about building sustainable influence. So again, make sure you guys follow along, sign up for our newsletter, so that way you can make sure that you stay caught up. As always, I'm Scott, and joining me is our go-to leadership guru, Dr. Michael David Morales, but many of you know him as Mo.
Hey, what's up, Scotty? I have a little bit of a glimpse into what you're talking about today. One of my favorite presidents. Go for it.
Yeah, John F. Kennedy. So most people know Kennedy for the Kennedy assassination and the conspiracy theories that surround that. And a lot of people forget that the great things that he did during his presidency. But one of the things that he was really crucial at was showing his high level of just emotional intelligence. And he really showed it during some of the toughest moments in his presidency, like, for example, the Cuban Missile Crisis. During that process, he kept his cool and didn't rush into military action, even though so many of his advisors were pushing to take military action that inevitably would have launched us into an all-out war, not just a Cold War, with, I think it was still the USSR back then, the Soviet Union. But instead, he opted for diplomacy. He showed a lot of self-regulation. But he also had a real empathy for how the situation affected both Americans and Soviets alike, which really helped him make the right call to avoid a nuclear war at the end of the day. And his ability to communicate effectively, especially in speeches like his inaugural address, inspired so many different people to get involved and really serve kind of a bigger cause that was the America back then. But apart from that, he also grew into just such a strong advocate for civil rights, which was a shift in reality from where he had been, but showed kind of that growing empathy. So initially, he was really cautious about kind of pursuing civil rights and touching it, but he kind of had a glimpse into what the brutal reality of segregation was like, and then ended up really pushing hard for serious legislation to end it. And the Civil Rights Act was kind of his doing. It was his doing at the end of the day. But he really showed a whole lot of self-awareness by understanding kind of the moral urgency behind that issue. And his social skills overall helped him kind of navigate that political challenge, because we don't think of it, but then it definitely was a political challenge to get that passed. And then at the end of the day, also get support for just that policy that would end up changing the entire country. So ultimately, his leadership style just really showed how emotional intelligence can help a leader really make a more impactful decision for society. And if you didn't guess it already, today's topic is a game changer, but it is emotional intelligence, just that key to building trust, navigating challenges, and inspiring that team. And it's all about understanding and managing emotions, both your own and others in one way or another, but overall to just create that environment where collaboration thrives, people lead, and people feel valued. And so, Mo, why don't you take us into that first point for today?
Yeah. Before I do that, fun fact about JFK. Some people might know this, that the JFK buffs, if you've read a lot of books on him like I have, did you know he was the first president to win the Pulitzer Prize in 1957 for his book, Profiles in Courage? And if you haven't read that book, I think you really need to read it. So, Scotty, put it on your list. That'll be the next one for you. So we're talking about...
I knew that was coming.
You knew I was going to give you another book to read. You just happened to make me think about it right away. I want to talk about emotional intelligence today. Leaders understand emotional intelligence. Coined by Daniel Goleman, emotional intelligence is, quote, the ability to recognize, understand, and manage your own emotions while influencing the emotions of others, close quote. And so he's 4 components, and I just want to run through them real quick. He talks about self-awareness, meaning you have to recognize emotions and their impact. So there's studies out there that show that about 36% of people can accurately identify their emotions when they happen. That's not a lot. If you don't have a handle on what your self-awareness is, that's a bad place to start. All leaders have to have some kind of self-awareness. Leaders, had you ever felt frustrated, maybe before a meeting or before giving direction, and you just kind of lose control? And then all of a sudden your team is upset, and your lack of self-awareness and your emotions affects the team. The second one is this: self-management. It is controlling emotional reactions. Leaders with high self-regulation don't lash out. They don't make impulsive decisions. They use what Jeff Bezos calls the wait 24 hours rule. And you can imagine what that is, which is, if you want to make a decision on something that you think, this is absolutely horrible, wait 24 hours, You have to avoid responding emotionally. How many times have you gotten an email and you thought, I need to respond to this right away? You get a text message and you think, I've got to give this person a piece of my mind. Wait 24 hours, see how you feel, and then go from there. The third is this, social awareness. You need to learn how to read the emotional cues in others. So empathy is a core component, and leaders who understand their team's emotions can better address concerns and motivate them. So leaders, are you doing that? Are you understanding your team's emotions? Not just self-awareness, social awareness. What is going on around you? And the fourth is this, relational management. Can you navigate relationships effectively? Relationships is a leader's bread and butter. Conflict resolution, teamwork, influencing others, understanding your own emotional quotient or EQ. That's just a synopsis. Scott, what are your thoughts on those 4 points? Because I had you read Emotional Intelligence 2.0 very early in our journey together, and I think it really made an impact on your life.
The one thing that really stood out to me, and it just cut me to my core, was that idea of self-management, right? The idea of waiting 24 hours. I'm a snap, as Malcolm Gladwell would call it, I'm a snap decision maker. Like, I am that person that's like, you want me to tell you what to do? I will tell you what to do right now. I don't know a lot about the situation, but I'll make a decision for you. And that is definitely needed. It's a great quality to have, but it's one of those things that I have to be self-aware of, right? I have to self-manage that just because it's one of those things that if I don't in certain situations take that time to step back and say, hey, what exactly is this all encompassing? Then I can make terrible decisions, and I have, right? We learn the best by failing. Absolutely. But at the same time, being aware of that, I do that. And I am that snap decision maker has just helped. And it's one of those things that's talked so much about in Emotional Intelligence 2.0.
You know very well, Scott, that one of the first things that I teach leaders to do is to never give their opinion. Don't give your opinion because nobody wants it. Even if they tell you they want it, they don't want it. And even if you can't live by that principle in totality, at least it's going to get you to the 24-hour rule. When we started our journey, I say, Scott, don't give anybody your opinion. Nobody wants it. I don't care how much. And you just said you like to make snap decisions. Somebody says, Scott, what do you think about this? Well, I've got an answer. I said, well, don't give people your opinion. And I think for the most part, you do that pretty well now. But even in the beginning, we would talk and you'd say, somebody said something and I wanted to give my opinion, but I at least waited a couple of hours. Even if you wait a couple of hours, that really makes a difference. Leaders with high EQ are going to increase team performance by up to 37%. You would have better employee retention. People aren't going to leave your company. They're not going to go somewhere else, because why do people leave? When somebody leaves for money, they're usually going to get the same pay, maybe a little bit of a bump, maybe a little bit less when they go somewhere else. But I'll tell you why they leave. They leave because of poor management, bad managers, people they don't want to work with. So when somebody leaves your company, you say, well, they just left because they weren't a team player or they got a better offer somewhere else. No, they probably left because you're not a good enough leader. People would much rather work for good leadership for less money than if they got great benefits and had poor leadership. That's why they're leaving your company. Leaders, what are some of the common pitfalls so that you can avoid them? Leaders with low EQ are going to react emotionally instead of responding thoughtfully. Dale Carnegie says that you have to give people a reason to follow you. People want thoughtful leadership. What people don't like is they lack the self-awareness to lead within their blind spots. What is a blind spot? It's all the stuff that you don't know as a leader, and it can get scary. How do you learn those blind spots? You ask somebody. Trust me, people know what you're not good at. They talk about it behind your back when you leave the room. And if you are leading people, I guarantee when you leave, people have something to say about your blind spots, also known as the things that you're not good at or the things that you do bad. You get a good inner circle to help you with those blind spots. And thirdly, I'd say this. Leaders with low EQ always have an inability to empathize with team members. They just need to get things done. We just need to do this. We'll deal with it later. No. Your people are the most important asset. It's not the product that you're pushing out. It's your team members. Start empathizing and wanting to know what is going on in the lives of your team members. It's going to make a huge difference.
That's really true. And one of the things I think that's important to remember that when we're talking about, not putting your opinion up in so many different areas is people are going to react to you not giving your opinion. We are so used to yelling out our opinions, and we want people to know that we think we're the smartest people. It's that ego, right? Like, check your ego, as Jocko would say. And we're so used to offering up those opinions that when we choose to not do that all of a sudden, or we start to make that process, people react negatively. And I've had that experience too, where I just don't have an opinion, or I choose not to share my opinion about certain things. And people are almost disappointed that they're going to miss out on that opinion or whatever. Like I have some profound prophetic nature to offer the ultimate opinion on things. And so just what a great reminder, and just kind of a great exercise that our leaders can really practice. And so I know that we've kind of hit on the idea of kind of why emotional intelligence is just so vital in leadership. But how do we go about developing that emotional intelligence? Where do we start? What are some great things that we can do? What can our leaders kind of start to do? Obviously, reading Emotional Intelligence 2.0, great place to start.
Absolutely.
But what are some of those things, maybe while they're waiting, maybe they don't have Prime and have to wait, like a week and a half to get that book. So where do we start? Or how do our leaders start developing that?
Yeah, so for that second point today, developing your emotional intelligence, let me give you some practical ways to improve your EQ for leaders out there. One is this: develop your self-awareness. Keep a journal. Write it down. Write down your emotions. What were 3 emotions that you felt today? Did I react as a leader, or did I respond as a leader today? There's a difference. You don't want to react. You want to respond. When you write these things down, they become real. They're right in front of you. When Scott and I started on the journey, I said, Scott, you have to journal. I don't care if you've never journaled in your life. You now have to have a journal, and everybody knows that Scott's journal is called Scotty P's Big Book of Leadership. And there's a ton of stuff in there now. And you can go back and see, how did I respond, or how did I react? Second thing is this: ask for feedback. Who do I ask for feedback from? You got to have mentors. You got to have coaches, an inner circle of people to ask for feedback. And then thirdly, I'd say this: you need to have practices in your life, whether it's meditation, prayer. That's going to help you with your self-regulation. So Scott, why don't you tell our audience how journaling has changed the way that you do life and leadership?
Yeah, my journaling is pretty sporadic. About me, and it's, I think when you think of the idea of journaling, people often revert to that idea of a diary, but that's just not the case. I have my journal. I bring it with me wherever I go. It's in my backpack. Or I should say, for the most part, it goes wherever I go, but I'm pulling it out and I'm writing, 2 sentences sometimes, and I do journal for longer, but sometimes it's just like, man, this happened. This was a cool leadership opportunity. I was just telling you before we started recording how I had a great opportunity to talk to someone this morning kind of about leadership, getting an idea of their workplace and kind of getting that opportunity. And I journaled about it. So my lunch break, I sat down, I brought my journal, and I wrote about that experience. I wrote about what I thought I did well. I wrote down the questions I wish I would have asked, or how I wish I would have asked them. And then I just made a note, hey, I'm going to continue to have interactions with that person. I'm going to continue to follow up with them. I'm going to continue to impress on them, continue to recommend books, because now I do that all the time, thanks to Mo. But journaling is just one of those things, and it doesn't have to be this amazing thing. It can be simple, it can be cursive, it could be print, it could be all caps, it can be whatever you want. And you can start however you want, but it's so crucial in that step to becoming a better leader to just start writing things down.
I like that. Leaders, you got a journal. The second one is this: you have to strengthen your empathy. How do I do that? How do I be more empathetic with people? Start active listening. Active listening is focusing on somebody else and trying to understand them before you respond. Make sure you're not reacting, you're responding. And the way you do that is by active listening. Put yourself in the other person's shoes. All of our parents have told us that before you make a decision, before you say something, you ask yourself, how would I feel if I was in their situation? I'm never going to be that other person in that situation, because situations are always different. People are always different. You can never know exactly what that person is going through. You should never, ever say to somebody, man, I know exactly how you're feeling. You don't. Are you being an empathetic person? And the third one that I'll give you is this: you need to improve your self-regulation. Pause before responding. Count to 5, count to 20. Don't just say the first thing that comes to your mind, because it's probably going to be something not smart or dare I say, detrimental to the conversation. Use stress management techniques, learn how to breathe, do exercises, do whatever you can to step away from the situation before you get involved with it, and you're going to probably make better decisions. So, for instance, Abraham Lincoln's technique, he would write an emotional letter, but he would never send it. He was famous for doing that. These letters that he just gave somebody a piece of his mind, he never sent it out, but he put it down on paper. You do need to read Emotional Intelligence 2.0. Why? It's going to give you a step-by-step framework to develop your EQ. You need to get better at your emotional quotient. It's also going to give you a free assessment that's going to help you identify your strengths and your weaknesses. Scott, what did Emotional Intelligence 2.0 do for you?
One of the really big things that kind of stood out is analyzing really how I should say used to respond in conflict. And I think I used to respond like a lot of people typically respond, and it's with defensiveness. The minute there's a sense of conflict, my guard goes up and I'm defensive, and it's almost that fighting match of where can I get in a punch? How can I win this? And that was something that really was freeing in reality, just understanding that in times of conflict, I would get so defensive that it prevented productive conversation. And in reality, when it comes to conflict, if you want to have productive conversation, you can't be defensive. You just can't. And so that was one of the things that really kind of, apart from many others, but that was one of the big ones that really stuck home for me.
I love it, brother.
All right. Before we sign off for today, Mo, do you have any words of wisdom for us?
I don't have any words of wisdom, but I will say this. You need to focus on the 4 core strategies. Self-awareness, noticing emotions before reacting. Self-management, visualizing positive outcomes for you and your team. Social awareness, understanding body language cues. And relationship management, such as clear and empathetic communication, is going to make a big difference. How do you learn these? You read Emotional Intelligence 2.0. Here's the action step that I have for our people today. Take the EQ assessment in the book after you've read it and work on one area and do it this month. If you do that, it is going to start a chain reaction in the way that you do leadership. As an emotional being, we lead out of our emotions and who we are. And one of the big things that we do here at Rising Tide is help people learn how to lead from who they are to who your people are. Read Emotional Intelligence 2.0. It's life-changing. It will do wonders in your leadership, and it'll make you a better person.
Such a powerful way to end there. So truly remember, everybody that's listening, that you cannot lead others if you don't know yourself first. And one of those first steps is, like Mo said, reading that Emotional Intelligence 2.0. So thanks everybody so much for tuning in today. We really appreciate you being a part of today's episode. If you guys enjoyed what you heard, just please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. And don't forget to visit our website, rtclc.com. Sign up for that monthly newsletter where we share all of our extra insights that we don't get to on this podcast. Until next time, lead with purpose, stay authentic, and make an impact.